I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I'm on a mission to achieve some greatness.
What is going on?
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right. So before we get started, let's do the introductions and everything. I want to thank everybody for coming back and watching the second episode of Lived Experiences. I have my guest here, Tashara Folks. Um, can you introduce yourself to the people, Tashara?
Sure. So, hello, everyone. Good evening, or maybe good morning, or I don't know where you're coming from, but hey, we're based out of Florida, so it's 7:30 Eastern time. But hi, everyone. My name is Tashara. I go by Shara often. I am known in the community as a social worker. But outside of what I do, I am just a human being that loves to be goofy and enjoy family time and time with loved ones. So it's really dope to be here. And thank you, Jackie, for having me.
Yeah, I am honored to have you on the show. All right, so let's get into it. We got like 30 minutes. So tonight's topic is what exactly is fatherhood? So for me, fatherhood, it goes beyond the scope of just protecting, providing, and it to me it's being present. I think being present in the child's life has a more positive effect than any amount of money that you could ever give.
Yeah, that's tough. It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a cousin, and I won't share any names just in case he's watching, but he's a father, and him and the mother of his children are not together. And he was saying how, he never wanted to be the father that wasn't present, but unfortunately, things happen, and his kids and his ex live in a different state than he does. And so presence is hard, right? When you're not
Mhm.
in the same state,
Yeah.
in the same house, let alone in the same state. And how does that impact fatherhood when, like, the mother may not be the easiest to get along with for reasons outside of the kids, and I can get both sides, but it just kind of sucks when the father has nothing but I guess finances that can reach the kids due to
Mhm.
like life, right? So
Yeah.
how does that work?
So for me, I have learned that because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've had the difficult person, and I have my wife of 6 years. We have two kids together. So I've learned that fatherhood is literally parallel to motherhood. So
Oh.
sorry, as much as I am a father, my wife also has to balance that out. So I've learned that she's given me the freedom to define what fatherhood is for me. She doesn't decide what fatherhood is for me, but I one thing that I do say, I do allow her to give me critiques. So it's like, hey, you're being too rough. That was unnecessary. You didn't need to yell at the kids. And then it's up to me. I get to go back and I can reflect on what she says and make the necessary adjustments if I deem it was excessive. But she also gives me the freedom to continue being myself. I don't have to sugarcoat myself. While on the other spectrum, as far as it the difficult mother, it creates a situation where, like you said, all you have to give is finances. And from that point, it's like, unfortunately, you have a child that grows up not knowing the goodness of the father that you could be.
Right.
You just have that. oh, I never see him. And then he grows up with resentment towards you 9 times out of 10 because they only get one side of the story.
Yep.
But what I will say is that I do know that fatherhood is different for each person, which is why I think the conversation is so important, because even though it's different for each person, I think there are some general underlying similarities throughout.
Okay.
So even in that situation where you can't be the father, the present father, I think and I feel that you should be making preparation for when that child is ready to receive you. And I think at that point, that's the most you can do, is be prepared for when that child is like, hey, where were you? And then you have your receipts. You have things to give that child to say, hey, I love you and I never forgot about you. Here you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think that's powerful. I'm not a father. I'm not a parent. I'm not a biological parent. I have 2 godchildren and many nieces and nephews, but I think it's tough, man. As a child whose father wasn't present, my parents, I think, are still married to this day, but I have no working memory of them living in the same home. I've heard stories, right, of like your dad is this and your dad is that, and I think fatherhood is not equivalent to husbandness,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yes.
like the roles are not the same, and arguably, I guess, in my seat as a therapist, I hear a lot of stories, right? And I think sometimes as women, we may try to equate the two, right? Or see if he's not good as a partner, that means he's not good as a father, which is, it's not interchangeable. And I think when we talk about like what is fatherhood, as a woman, my hope would be, if I do end up having a child with someone, married or not, that I can see him in those 2 entities and not utilize my own personal issues with him as a partner or co-parent against him as a father. And I think that takes a lot of maturity, right? And maybe I'm not that mature. I can only speak from a position where I'm not in, but I would hope, right, that I could do that. And I would hope that mothers, right, or parents try to do that to the best of their ability for the child's sake, for the child's sake.
So I think that, like you said, being a good parent, being a good father does not necessarily equal being a good spouse.
Yeah. 100%.
And vice versa. Being a bad parent doesn't equal being a bad spouse. I think what a lot of people don't know how to do is compartmentalize. That is separate from whatever else I'm doing. And I feel it's separate simply because of the fact that me being a father is the relationship between directly me and my child.
Yeah.
And being a good spouse is the relationship directly between me and my significant other, and me and my child. So even though one encompasses both of them, the fatherhood element is completely separate. And so many times we refuse to separate it because we have our personal feelings in the way. It's, I can't believe he did that to me. And it sucks because the only people that hurt in the end, yes, you hurt the father short term. Yes, he'll be emotional. But the lasting damage that will be done to the child is worse than anything you could do to the father. And now they got to come book a session with you.
Yeah, for sure. I have some interesting, I had a question I wanted to ask you, and then it just so happens that we're talking about this today. At what point does a man become a father?
A man, in my opinion, because I can only speak for me, it's when you make that conscious decision to say within yourself that this child is now my priority.
Okay.
So I had a discussion with the difficult parent, and I explained to her, granted, I wasn't me back then. I was not as nice but the gist of the conversation was, I need a lot less of you in my life and a lot more of my son. And she wasn't able to digest it because in her head, she replied, you cannot have your son unless you have me. And that is the wrong way. But it goes back to why I was saying that motherhood is equal to fatherhood. The mother, I don't know if it's the society that we live in, but the mother literally has to allow the father to be a father. Like, you have to step out of my way so I can do what the father needs to be done. And a lot of times what hurts the child is that when the mother is overprotective, they don't get to grow up well-rounded, because the father does add an element to the child's life that the mother cannot add. And it's not saying that you can't raise a successful child as a mother. You can. But it's undeniable that the father has great impact in that child's life. Even if you look at the statistics, they say most people who are in jail commit violent crimes. They grew up in single mother homes and things of that nature. Most people that drop out of school come from single mother homes. And it's not anything against the mother, because even in fatherhood, we have those that choose to neglect their responsibility. So it doesn't take any accountability away from the fathers that choose to not be present. Mm-hmm. But if you have a father that wants to be present, as the mother, it's your job to then allow him to be what he can be for his child, within reason, of course.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, and when I thought about that question about like, when does a man become a father, even like literally, right? A woman becomes a mother as soon as she finds out she's pregnant.
Yes.
Oftentimes what I hear is that men are not allowed to become fathers until, like you said, the woman allows them. So whether that's once they actually see the baby, once they feel the baby kick, right? Because there's no like the male partner in in heterosexual couples is not directly connected, right? To the baby, right. Like the mom is the woman, the woman with the womb. So when I hear men talk about like fatherhood, it's an interesting dynamic, because sometimes I have clients and friends and family members that the birthing parent doesn't allow the actual sperm donor father, the one who actually helped create this this baby, be a part. So literally they're a father, right? Because they have a child, their sperm has, entered an egg and it's become an actual baby, but they have no connection to the baby. And I can't imagine how heartbreaking that may feel to know that you are a father by definition, but you have no connection to the word. It's just a word.
Yeah. So just a moment of transparency for me. I do have a son. He lives in South Florida. I live in Orlando. For those who don't know, Shara knows because we talk. My son and I, we are separated at the point. I'm in the process of, lawyering up. I have my lawyer waiting on court dates. So, but what I was going to say is that because I cannot be there for my son physically, the most I can do is pray for him. And, I pay my child support. Reluctantly, of course, because I don't believe I have my personal issues with that system. But when my son, I talked to my first lawyer, because I've had multiple lawyers at this point, spent thousands of dollars just to try to be a part of my son's life. When I spoke to my first lawyer, she told me that when your son was born, the mother got rights and you were born with a financial obligation. So in my opinion, fatherhood in general, we don't appreciate it as a society. I think it's one of the things, and granted, women are amazing. I always say my wife is literally made of magic because she can do things that I can't. But she understands the value of me being there. And I don't think we've come to that realization as a society yet. And I think it hurts the children as a whole.
Yeah. And I think beyond that, it hurts the man, right? It hurts our men. Because typically, my specialty, for those who don't know me, I work from a mental health standpoint with women and couples that are pregnant, postpartum, or struggle with getting pregnant. They struggle with infertility, or they're looking for some type of fertility treatment to get pregnant, or even same-sex couples that need fertility treatment, right, to conceive, to have a baby. And you can't tell nobody what to do with a kid, right? Women typically be like, this is my kid, right? My kid. And for a man to not be able to have that same level of conviction to say, like, this is my kid. Like, really quick story. I'll never forget, at my last job, one of my first patients, and I was working in a psychiatric office. So I was just doing psychotherapy. And one of my first patients was like 30-something-year-old male, and him and his ex had a child together. At the time that his ex delivered, he found out that this was not his biological son. It didn't matter to him. He was there. I don't believe he was able to sign the birth certificate. Something like that. So, like, rights, legally, he has no rights to this child. Right. But was there the entire pregnancy. That's his girlfriend. Situations happen. He's like, this is my kid. Fast forward 4 years later, 2 years later, the mom ends the relationship and says, you cannot see this. This is my child. And it crushed my patient. I mean, he was struggling with severe depression, suicidal thoughts. His son was his world. And because there was no blood relation, he didn't sign the birth certificate. This lady was able to just walk away with his kid. And, you know, I'm listening to his story and I feel like it was just so heartbreaking, because it's like, literally there was nothing I could do, right, to change the situation for him. And then you have a guy who wants to be in this beautiful baby's life, you know? So, you know, as a therapist and then as a human being, I struggled. And I'm just like, man, you know, it sucks. So just saying all that to say, like, I don't know that there's, like, women, we don't really have to worry about that at the same magnitude. Like, nobody's coming and taking our kid the way that we can for men. So I think fathers, you know, men tend to become fathers. And this is a very generalized statement once, like, the baby's here, typically. But women become mothers, or they start feeling that maternal instinct and things like that once they find out they're pregnant, right? It's two different processes or journeys to parenting. And I think we have to address that when we talk about, like, fatherhood and what it looks like practically, especially in the Black community.
Yeah, and I will also say it's different when you are in the home with the woman while she's pregnant.
Sure.
Because I know for me, like, I got to bond with my daughters while they were in the womb. Like, I got to pat on her belly and they would kick back. And, you know, granted, the connection wasn't as special as what my wife felt. But, you know, I had some form of connection with the children before they came. And that's a bond that I didn't have with my son. And I will also say that with fatherhood it's just like any other relationship. In order for it to develop, you have to be able to spend time with that person or child. Because if me as an adult, I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. So I can't expect the child to be the same. I can't skip out 6 months of his life, come back, and then think he's going to be the same child, because he's not. So I think the father absolutely has to be present. And I think that the woman has to be willing to let him be present.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I think fatherhood is one of the less complicated topics. It's you procreate with a person, you stand up for your child. You know, I think that, you know, just going off subject a little bit, as far as co-parenting, it's not as complicated as people make it seem. When you understand that the mother has the best interest for the child, the father has the best interest for the child, and you're able to communicate on a mature level, it makes life a lot more simple. And just understanding that it's their child as well. You know, for me, it should never be my child. It's our child. You know, like when I have to communicate with the difficult parent, she's always saying my son, and I'm always saying our son. And it kind of hurts me a little bit too, because it's like, in all honesty, I don't want to be connected to you, but I want to take care of my son. It's not about you, it's about the child. And I believe that, because all the fathers that I am associated with are hard down, they love their children with every bit of their soul. And I'm no different. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that the man has feelings too. I think as a society, we downplay the feelings of men, because I think men are not good at communicating how they feel, but they have feelings and we don't acknowledge them. So we need to understand that fathers love their children.
Yeah, and want to be there, right? We talk about postpartum depression with women all the time, but there's postpartum depression in men. There's postpartum anxiety and post-traumatic stress as well. Men are equivalently susceptible to having mental health issues during a pregnancy or after a baby's born, depending on the level of connection that they have, right, with the fetus, with the baby, how difficult the relationship is with the mom, what's the mom's mental health. So I think if we think about it as like just being a parent and not like that dichotomy of like motherhood and fatherhood, maybe we'll have more empathy, right, for each other. But it's a hard thing.
So men have a form of post-traumatic birth.
They can, yeah. The same symptoms that we see in for example, in postpartum depression, where it's literally like depression clinically, it just in a postpartum phase. So after the first year after a woman gives birth, we can see the same thing in men. And actually, there's an organization called Postpartum Support International. They have a dads group where they talk about like mental health things for dads. That's facilitated by fathers. So there are resources out there for my fathers out there that need support. I can't imagine, right, how challenging it is the pressures and the stress that fathers have in or outside of the home of their kids, right?
Yeah, especially those that don't have the financial backing to even hire a lawyer. So,
for sure.
So what would you suggest for men that are struggling with depression because of being alienated?
Yeah, man, I think the first, I guess this is maybe from a privileged standpoint, but therapy. There's a website called psychologytoday.com where individuals can find a therapist based off of their needs, what city they live in, what state they live in, if they have insurance, if they don't, what's their chief complaint? Do they want a person of color? Do they want a female, a male, someone bilingual? So that would be my first resource to give. A lot of these things is just talking through. Can we change the situation? No. Can we change the fact that you and the mother of the baby are not seeing eye to eye? Not necessarily. But can we provide you with a space to vent, to cry, to feel, to get angry, to express that anger? Can we offer healthy ways for you to manage that anger and correctly appropriate that anger, put that anger in certain places, because it has to come out. And we want it to come out in a healthy way. We don't want people to say like, don't be angry. Like you put yourself in a situation that is isolating and feels like judgmental, right? But if you're angry, could you write a letter and then burn it up or rip it up, right? Are you able to go talk to a therapist and then maybe go to one of those places where you break things? Or create a emotion room in one of the rooms in your home and pad it. And if you need to hit the wall because it's padded, you can do that. Like, how can we help you manage these emotions? Because I can imagine, heck yeah, you may want to use some choice words to the mother of the baby, right? Because she's trying you, and I get it. So I would definitely encourage reaching out to a licensed therapist, particularly that works with families. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think the key word in there was license. Don't go to your friends because they probably not going to have the best advice for you.
Don't go to your pastor. Go to a licensed professional, because we got people in our lives, for the most part, they are yes people, and they may encourage us to do things that are a little ratchet. Because I know in my real life, I'm down for the ratchet stuff with my friends. My friends going through a breakup and they're like, we about to go to his house. To Shar, the human is like, let's ride. To Shar, the therapist would never recommend that to her clients, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, for sure.
Like, I just want to do hood rat stuff with my friends.
I just want to do it. Why not? Why not? In a controlled environment. Why not? Exactly.
Yeah. So, I don't know. How do you plan on allowing your future husband, your future Nigerian husband?
If you out there, this is not what that's for. Go ahead.
How do you plan on creating a safe space for him to develop into a father?
Man, I think by keeping men. So I was privileged enough. I think it's because I played basketball. Like, I'm a hooper out here, y'all. To have a lot of males around me. So keeping good men around me that I can watch as fathers, as husbands, and stuff like that is number one. Being in therapy. So I have my own licensed marriage and family therapist that I already see, and I was intentional about a marriage and family therapist because I knew marriage is something I desired. Mm-hmm. So she can hold me accountable too, right? So having those safe spaces and remembering respect. Like, at the end of the day, just as equally as I'm a parent, so is he. I may not like the way that he uses a bottle or changes the baby or, roughs up the baby when they plays, but he may not like what I do. And so the same level of respect that I desire, just because I was the carrier or the mom, doesn't mean that my opinion is more valued than his. So knowing that practically in my rational brain, and then having accountability around me to help me remember when I'm more emotional and those hormones are all over the place.
Yeah. And I think the accountability part is major. Us as men, we have to have some form of accountability partners that we know will tell us the harsh truth when things are not easy to talk about. So I have a select few of friends that I can talk to about any and everything, and they give me, like, sometimes my feelings be hurt, but because I know it's coming from them, I know it's said in love. There's no malice. Yeah. But I outside of the friend group, I think that we need to, as fathers, we need to make sure that we're connected with other fathers. Just like, because I'm a husband, I like being connected to other husbands. So, because it just makes it easier to relate to.
Yeah, 100%. I wish I had it. It's in another room, but there's an author by the name of Brene Brown, and she has a book called Atlas of the Heart, and in there she talks about different emotions and basically the art of connection. And the chapter I was reading this past week, she talks about belonging, and in essence, that belonging is like a core desire of us as human beings, and not fitting in, but belonging, where we find this level of connection and relatability with our peers. So yes, if we are fathers, if we're husbands, if we're Christians, if we are Black, if we're social workers, if we are real estate agents, like, we tend to gravitate to people who have some level of connection to us and who we are, what we do. So absolutely. Yeah. If you're a dad, I encourage, that doesn't have to be your only friend group, but definitely connect with other dads, because that's how we learn and hold you accountable. Like, if you with your single friends, they may not say like, yo, where your kid? Like, where's your child? You always in these streets. Where's your child? Right? Your single friends are like, oh, she with her mom, she good. Your father friends that are married might be like, no, you're equally the parent. You don't watch your child. This is your child. You're not, oh, the mom told me I gotta watch. You don't watch your own kid. That's your child.
Yeah. I am not a babysitter. Yeah, I'm not a babysitter. I'm being a parent. Like, don't ever get it twisted.
So yeah, I agree, definitely.
Yeah. All right, Tashara, time's up. Thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate having you. Can you tell us where they can find you so they can book a session? Because I know we got some mentally stressed people out there.
Man, aren't we all, right? You can find me on psychologytoday.com. You can type in your favorite social worker or YFSW Counseling LLC. That's my business name. I'm on there. Or you can email me at beingavoice3, the number 3 at gmail.com. That's beingavoice3 at gmail.com. And even if I'm not the therapist for you, I have a myriad of colleagues that I can refer to that are just as qualified. So get the help. Jackie, thank you so much. And everybody have a good evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good one.